So, I'm here with Chantal, and we both are from the United States, and we both are teachers in Japan. So, I thought we would talk a little bit about some of the stereotypes that people might have in other countries, for example, Japan or other countries, about Americans. So, first, we're going to talk about hamburgers.
Okay.
Okay, so hamburgers. How often do you actually eat a hamburger?
Hamburgers. I would say it's actually not that often. Although I love hamburgers, I love them very much, but maybe only a couple times a month or so.
Yeah, I agree. I think hamburgers is the one thing that does not meet the stereotype that we don't eat them that often. Like, I never have hamburgers in America.
Okay.
Pretty much
Yeah.
never. Like, I'll have them if somebody's barbecuing it, maybe for a picnic or something. Yeah, and if I do eat fast food, it's usually not a hamburger. I eat something else. Like, I eat tacos or burritos, right?
Yeah.
I don't eat hamburgers. So that's one. I think hamburgers don't really match the stereotype myth.
Yeah,
Do
I
you
agree.
agree?
I agree, especially because I know many of my students here in Japan, they will ask me often what I eat for lunch. And before I respond, because they're playing a joke on me, they'll say like, "Oh, hamburger, hamburger." And
Yeah.
I have to tell them that, now I do live in Japan, but in the United States, I don't typically eat hamburgers every day.
Yeah.
But that is a lot of what they think. They think that I eat hamburgers regularly or at least fast food, but their image of fast food is only hamburgers.
So true. And actually, the funny side story to that, or contrary story, would be, sushi. So we both teach in Japan, and I think most people think that you eat sushi all the time in Japan. And it's almost the equivalent of the hamburger. You don't eat it that much,
That is so true.
right?
So true. I cannot say how true that is.
Or another one, we're talking about stereotypes, would be sumo. So Japanese people are not that into sumo, really, right? But it's an iconic thing.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the point of baseball.
Ah, yes.
So do you actually like baseball?
I do. I love baseball. I do. And I used to go to some games in the United States. In San Francisco, I went to several Giants games growing up. Yeah. So I do enjoy baseball. Do you enjoy baseball?
I do. I have to admit, like I played, baseball when I was younger. I loved baseball. But I do think it's not as popular as people think it is. You know what I mean? I think that
Yes.
like a lot of people like it, you like it, I like it, but a lot of people could care less
Yes.
about baseball.
Most of the time, I think I hear people say it's a slow sport, it's boring, no one wants to watch it. They're
Right.
much more inclined to watch basketball or football instead of baseball.
So true.
So your favorite age group is the junior high school age.
Yeah.
Do you have much experience teaching younger children?
Younger children like toddler age?
Well, how about elementary school?
Yeah, elementary school I've been teaching for about 5 or 6 years. They're fine. You just have to be a bit silly with those kids.
Yes.
Just have a good time. Can't really be too serious when you're teaching young kids because they're still kids.
That's true. So how about younger than that? How about the kindergarten age? How are they for you?
They're probably my Achilles heel. I'm not great with kindergarten students or younger than that because they don't respond to reason.
Right.
Yeah. So they're difficult for me to teach. I prefer teaching older students. How about you? What kind of age range do you like teaching?
I think I appreciate all parts of all age groups. Every group has its pros and cons. Recently, I've been teaching university students, and I think I'm remembering how much I enjoy it because they are adults and you can treat them like adults, and you can still have a bit of silly fun with them too.
Yeah.
So these days, I think I prefer teaching the older students, the university age students. You can really go into topics quite deeply,
Yeah.
and you can get some interesting answers from some students. Other students, of course, you can't.
Everyone's different, right?
Yes, you just have to find a way of teasing their potential out of all of them, I think.
Is there a group that you don't like teaching?
I'm not used to junior high school children, junior high school students. I don't have any experience with them, so that would make me nervous, I think.
How do you think they would be different to university students?
I think, from what I mentioned before, the teenagers, the hormones, I think that would be different. There's it's bubbling inside them, all of these changes of feelings and emotions, and they have so many things to deal with, pressure of growing up, and I think that can be more challenging. But I think it's important as a teacher to try to remember what it was like when you were that age.
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing that will help you.
absolutely. So what do you think about teaching young children, like babies? How are you with that?
I do really enjoy that. Babies are awesome. They have their own set of needs, but usually the very young classes come with, the parents are there too, so it's kind of a group-led situation, teacher-led group, and yeah, it's good fun for me. They're very cute and squishy, and and very not uncontrollable. What's the word?
Unpredictable?
That's it. Completely unpredictable. One day they can be in the best mood ever, and then the next day they're just a nightmare.
I think that's why I'm terrified of them. Because they're so unpredictable. I don't like it.
Yeah, that's true. And the bodily functions too,
Yeah, no thanks.
There's
No
all of
thanks.
that.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to deal with that. No thank you. No thank you. No bodily functions.
So, Katie, you're a teacher.
Yes.
What is your favorite age group of students?
Probably my favorite age group is around the junior high school age, so from about 11 to 15.
Okay.
I think they're the most interesting to teach.
What makes them so interesting?
Well, they already have personalities, and they're like almost adults, but not quite adults. So it's interesting to see, I think it's just really interesting to teach them and see how they respond to stuff. It's very different from adults, and it's very different from children, but it's kind of almost there, but not quite.
Yeah, that sort of bridging
Yeah.
age group.
Yeah.
I guess.
So they're still young kids, so I can still teach them stuff. But they're old enough to also do stuff by themselves.
Yes.
So it's like the perfect age group to teach, I think.
Yeah, independence.
Yeah.
That's right. What about things like behaviour and attitude? I just imagine that age group to be quite challenging. I mean, there's a lot of hormones going on, and personalities are forming. So
usually, when in their first year of junior high school, they're fine because they're all still they're still babies. They've gone from being the oldest kids in elementary school to the babies at junior high school. But when they get to second year,
yeah.
that's when they start getting a bit moody, a bit hormonal, a bit grumpy in class. But then when they go to third grade, that's when they start becoming normal people again, I think.
So second year's the challenging year.
Yeah, the terrible twos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that works in both ways,
Yeah,
huh?
it does.
So do you have any particular strategies or tips for dealing with that difficult age?
I think why they're so moody is because they're almost adults, like they're becoming adults. So if you stop treating them like kids and start treating them like adults, talking to them like adults,
Right.
treating them like you treat an adult, then
Yeah.
they respond better to that than if you like just shout at them like you would a kid, or if you discipline them like you would a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, just treat them more like adults and they respond to it really well, I think.
So you find they step up to the they meet
Most of
the expectations.
time. Most of the time.
Have you ever had any particularly challenging moments in the classroom?
Yeah. Yeah.
Silly question, really,
Of
isn't
course,
it?
yeah. I mean, I've had kids like throw textbooks out the window.
Oh,
I've
really?
had kids like punch their fists through walls. Like, I've had lots of angry kids,
Wow.
but they're very rare. I've had lots of them, but they're rare.
That's an interesting.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah. In terms of like overall in a class, there's usually only one in each class that's a troubled student. But I mean, that's anywhere. That happens anywhere.
That's true. So how do you deal with troubled students?
I think that's a very difficult question. There's no like textbook way of dealing with troubled students in general, because every kid's different. Every kid has a different problem. Every kid is acting out for a different reason. So you have to find out why they're troubled, why they're acting out, and try and deal with it in the best way you can. Yeah, don't get angry is probably my best advice, even though you feel like strangling them sometimes. But just try and be patient, try and figure out why they're acting out, and just deal with it from there.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, staying calm is probably the best option, isn't it?
And the 1 time out of 10 is when you really need to get really angry. That's the scary time.
Yeah, sometimes they just need to know, because there may be children with, just personalities, strong personalities, and they just are maybe showing off to the class, being a clown, and they just need that one moment where you show them, you have to listen to me, I am the boss, kind of thing. Just get your power back, perhaps.
So we were talking about climates, Amy. Are there any sort of climates that you'd like to live in?
I would like to live in Iceland or Scandinavia.
Interesting. Why would you like to live in that sort of climate?
The snow is just so beautiful, and my image of those countries is that their infrastructure is sufficient enough to keep you warm when you're inside, but outside is just so beautiful. The snow is amazing. It quietens everything. I think it's glorious. Just really like it. I used to ski when I was younger, so I like skiing, and I like the hills, and this snow on hills is just beautiful for me. How about you?
Well, I love snow too, but I don't like it when it gets all slushy and sloppy, it's like, and your feet are freezing, and I think like the ideal of snow is really appealing. I'm not sure about living in it. I prefer I don't know, maybe the climate of like southern Italy, kind of Mediterranean climate. I think that would be really quite pleasant, not too hot, by the sea. Although, in the summer it does get hot, but I don't think there's the humidity like here in Japan.
Right, I was thinking about that. What kind of heat is it? Is it a dry heat?
I think it's a drier heat, yeah. Whereas the heat, obviously, we get here is unbearable at times, right?
Yeah, it's really bad. Yep.
So,
What's the highest temperature? What's the range of temperatures, do you think, in southern Italy? That kind of climate, do you know?
I'm not sure. I guess maybe at this time of year it starts getting up towards 20 degrees C.
That's nice.
And then I think it does, places like Sicily, I think it does get pretty hot. Probably like, high 30s. Yeah, so... And then I think the winters are probably quite mild. Unless you're up in the north of Italy, of course, near the mountains.
Yeah.
I think down in the south, I think it remains kind of pretty mild,
If it's in the Med, then it must my image of that. I've never been to Italy, so I don't know. But I've been to the south of France, and that got really hot. That was a nice temperature, and it was dry, and the nighttime wasn't too hot either. It was really nice during the day. That was a nice climate, I think.
So, Amy, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they told me that you'd had quite a number of interesting little odd jobs. So, I'm interested. Could you tell me a bit about that?
I don't know how odd they were. I don't know. When I was in university, part-time jobs, I used to work in restaurants and, usual stuff, restaurants, and I think my favourite was working in a nightclub. It was a really, really big nightclub, and I used to work on the floor just kind of cleaning up, looking after all the drunk patrons. And on my first night there, it was actually one of my favourite DJs was on, so that was great. I got to listen to really good music whilst finding money on the floor and cleaning up after folk. It was really good.
You found some money on the floor?
Yeah, it was a busy club, really, really full, a good couple of thousand people in there. And I guess people were doing whatever they were doing, and they would drop big wads of cash. And because I was the person to clean up all the glass bottles, then I would find the wads of cash on the floor. So it was good. I'd get my wages, I'd get tips, and then I would get my own personal tips from finding money on the floor.
So you must have found a whole range of different things. What else did you find?
Yeah, little wraps of things and packets of things. I had to work hard for the money. It wasn't easy because the place was full, absolutely rammed of people. Everybody's incredibly drunk or whatever, and they're all just wanting to dance and have a good time. And I have to make sure there's no broken glass. For safety reasons, obviously. So I'm pushing my way through the crowd and keeping my eyes on the floor constantly with a torch. And alongside the broken glass that I would sweep up would be, wads of cash, sometimes little purses, little bags, things like that. When I found, identification for things, when it was a purse, I would, do the right thing with it, hand it in. But if it was just a wad up, a rolled up set of notes, I would just put them in my pocket for me, basically.
Yeah, it's difficult to know what to do with cash because, you hand it in to someone who, well, it's cash, isn't it? So,
I know.
Yeah.
When I found, I remember finding some driving license and student ID, and it was actually the same university that I went to at the time, and I just took it to uni when I was going in during the week, and I handed it in to make sure that it got back to the owner, because that's the worst thing about when you lose your purse or your wallet. The cash you can kind of just say goodbye to. It's a given, really, that it's going to be gone, but it's your ID and your cards and everything. It's such a hassle trying to get them back again. So I wanted to make sure that whatever drunken idiot dropped them in that club, that it got back to their hands safely.
Oh, that's nice. So you're a thief with heart then?
I'm not a thief. An opportunist.
I'm kidding.
It's on the floor.
I'm pulling your leg. No, I would have done the same.
So, Jeremy, you mentioned earlier that you've been back to Canada with your baby. How was that experience?
Well, I mean, until you fly with a toddler, you really never get to appreciate all of those times that you flew across the ocean, watching movies or reading magazines or just sleeping on the flight, because those days are over.
Wow.
I mean, it's not that bad, but when you're on the plane, you say never again. I remember about halfway into a 10-hour trans-Pacific flight, I thought, well, I can maybe do this every 3 years, but not more than once a year for sure. I mean, first of all, our boy was bigger than most children for his age, so he was about 1 year old. And they have these bassinets that you're allowed to put your child in, and the baby will hopefully sleep for a while. So the stewardess sets up the bassinet. We're all ready to put him in there, and then she says, "How old is he?" And he was 12 kilos, and this was for 11.5 maximum.
Oh,
and they wouldn't let us put him in there,
Oh.
so they had to take the whole thing apart, and basically we had to find some way to have him sleep on our laps for the next 9 hours. So, I mean, 1-year-olds like to crawl around, they like to scream, they like to cry. Other people on the flight don't like that so much. So, it's basically every minute of silence you just savor and just pray that this will keep going, and it never does. But once he falls asleep and the plane's quiet and they turn off the lights, then it's okay. But it's too long. It's too long for a 1-year-old. So I can maybe manage it once a year, but that's about it.
I remember my sister, she has 2 kids, and she told me a story a few years back when one of her daughters was still a toddler, and they went to Disneyland from Canada, and she said it was just horrible, and they would never do it again. And I just smiled. I didn't have that experience. I was just thinking, what could be so bad about it?
Yeah.
But hearing your story now, wow, I can only imagine.
Well, I think that actually most passengers on a flight are usually quite understanding. And I think it's just, in the parent's head that everybody's judging
That's
them,
true. That might
everybody's
be true.
looking at them. Because, I get so worried about what other people are thinking, that I'm inconveniencing others, that I just work myself up so much, and my wife's the same way. But, actually, we did have people say to us, like, don't worry about it. And they would just go out of their way to say, oh, what a cute baby and stuff like that. So I think people were kind of aware of how stressful it is for parents. And they just, some people actually make an effort to make parents feel like everybody's not silently judging them, or maybe not even silently.
Not saying anything. If you had one advice to give to a parent that would travel with a child in the future, what would you tell them?
My best advice is, if you can fly in the morning, so after baby wakes up and you have your breakfast and your flight's maybe at, 9 or 10 in the morning, I think that works out best if it's a 10-hour flight, because you'll land and it'll be probably around bedtime, like it's normal bedtime. The first time we did it, the flight was in the late evening, so basically he'd been up all day, and then there was another 10 hours on top of that. So, when we landed, the readjustment to his normal schedule was really, really difficult. But when we flew in the morning, and it was a 10-hour flight, when we landed, he just basically went to sleep
Okay.
like a normal schedule. So that's a small thing, but it really makes a big difference.
Thank you.
So, Paul, what's the most memorable job experience that you have?
Well, I think the most memorable is the volunteering time that I spent in Australia. And I was up in the northeastern corner where there's a relatively small rainforest. And I was helping with a research station that's located in the rainforest. So we do a range of different things, going from trying to control coconut trees.
Control?
Yeah, because, like, believe it or not, you imagine these kind of tropical paradises to have coconut trees, but they're actually very invasive and they're not native to that area.
Oh.
And basically, if you let a population of coconut trees to go out of control, nothing else can grow.
Oh.
They drop their fronds and they drop obviously the coconuts, and nothing else can grow. So you basically lose a lot of the native species there. So trying to keep them under control. There was also caring for bats that had been orphaned. Sometimes they're born, with physical disabilities that mean they can't survive in the wild. So
Right. Like a sanctuary then?
It's like a sanctuary, yeah. So they take care of
What size of bats? Like Indiana Jones style?
fruit bats.
What size are they?
They're pretty, like, once they spread, they're like little monkeys with big wings.
Yeah. So what's their wingspan like?
Let's say maybe, I guess, up to probably 4 feet. Does that sound too much?
Is that about a metre?
Yeah,
Half a metre
they're
each side?
like some of the big dudes.
Yeah.
They got a huge wingspan.
The only bats I've seen in real life are really tiny. They're just like little mice.
The micro bats.
They're like
yeah.
little birds,
Yeah,
you see them flying
yeah.
around and you think, oh, that's birds. No, they're bats. So these guys sound pretty big.
But they're completely like herbivorous. They only eat fruit.
Right.
So, like, they're really,
Do they eat the coconuts?
Well, the coconuts are kind of tough for them to get into. You need to be able to make a hole, I suppose,
Of course,
to get
yeah.
there. Yeah, but they eat mostly like fleshy fruits. Apples or whatever they can get. Really, berries, and they're really important for spreading. Because obviously they eat the flesh of the fruit, but they don't eat the seeds.
Okay.
So they just kind of pass through them.
Okay.
And they're really useful for dispersing seeds.
Yeah.
So, rainforests, regeneration, they're very important, animals.
So look, they're like the big bumblebees of the rainforests then.
Yeah, I guess you could look at it like that. Yeah. So yeah, that was an interesting volunteering kind of odd job that I had, I suppose.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
Really cool.
I really like to go back there someday.
Jeremy, I heard you have a new baby. Congrats on that.
Thanks.
So, how has fatherhood changed you in any way?
It's changed me probably in every way. when you think of how your life is different, it's basically from when you wake up until, well, you eventually get to go to sleep. Everything is different. But everything about it is positive. Even things that you'd think would annoy you actually aren't really that annoying. Like having a toddler come and wake you up at 6 o'clock in the morning when you've got a cold and you've taken a bunch of sleeping medication the night before, like which happened this morning. And even that, having a toddler wake you up and just looking at you and laughing, it's awesome. It really is awesome. So, I always kind of worried before when I was thinking about having a kid about all these things. Oh, I can't go out at night, or I'm going to have to wake up so early in the morning, and I'm going to be woken up in the middle of the night by a screaming child. All of that stuff really doesn't bother me. It just, it's part of the experience, and yeah, sometimes maybe I'd like to sleep a little bit longer, but yeah, waking up and then having a little guy sit on my lap while he plays with the remote control and changes channels over and over again. I mean, that's somehow a very, very enjoyable experience. But it's you get to see a little person change every day and start figuring things out. And of course, every parent thinks that their child is the smartest child in the world. He can turn off and on the light switch, but it's those types of things that you just marvel at. So, I can say, like most people, that it's everything about it is very positive, but it's often just the really, really small things that make you appreciate this little wonder.
And looking back on the experience now, what are some things that you would wished you had known? You wish you had known before your little boy came along?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was so stressed out for the first couple of weeks after he was born, and from the moment he was born until he came back home, and then for the first number of weeks that he was home, we basically just hovered over him for weeks. And of course you have to be protective and careful of a newborn baby, but not everything was as serious as we thought it was. And crying, we were worried about waking up our neighbors, or we were worrying that something was seriously wrong. Babies cry. And if you really get stressed out about it, then you're going to make your life miserable. So, having done it once, just realizing that, kids cry, kids get sick, kids throw up, kids need their nappies changed. I would just take a deep breath if I have to do it again, and just realize, okay, this is just part of the experience, and you just got to roll with it. So.
Okay, that's great.
So, thanks for telling me about the ballet and all that kind of stuff, but I'm really more into sports and things like that. Do you know of any other things you can do in New York?
Oh, absolutely. There are a lot of events for sports enthusiasts in New York. We've got basketball. The Knicks play. They're an NBA team. We've got baseball. The Yankees and the Mets play. And there's a feud. Yankees fans hate Mets fans, and Mets fans hate Yankees fans.
Right, they have two baseball teams.
That's right.
Wow.
Exciting. We even have a Subway Series. Well, it used to be a Subway Series because the teams would play at different stadiums. So they'd go to different stadiums for about a week or so, and the fans would just switch back and forth from one stadium to the other. But I think they recently built one stadium for both teams.
Oh. Do you think one team is more popular than the other?
I think probably the Yankees, unfortunately.
Oh, the Yankees?
Yeah, my family was a Mets fan, and don't tell anyone else in my family that I said that.
Oh, so I guess they don't get along with each other?
Oh, not at all.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm from Canada. I really like hockey. I know you guys have the Rangers.
Yeah, we do have the Rangers. They play at Madison Square Garden, so you could easily buy tickets to see a game there. That's the same place where the Knicks play, so.
Oh, they both play at the same place?
Yes, they do.
Oh, maybe I could go to a basketball and a hockey game.
You probably could if you stayed long enough. I think they have different seasons, right?
Oh, do they?
Yeah. Madison Square Garden's pretty big, though, so maybe there's more than one arena. I'm not sure. I've only been there 2 or 3 times in my life.
Oh, okay.
Well, we also have the U.S. Open, if you like tennis.
Right.
Yeah, that's held in Queens, not in on Manhattan.
Oh, okay. What about the there's U.S. Tennis Open, but there's also the U.S. Golf Open. Is that in New York as well?
In New York? I don't think is it?
I'm not sure.
I don't think the U.S. Open for golf is in New York. No, I don't think that's New York. Yeah. No.
Oh, okay. Have you seen the tennis before?
Yes, I have. I saw Serena Williams play.
She's great.
She is, yeah. Powerful woman.
Yeah, I'd like to see her play.
Yeah. Well, Warren, we've been talking about the fact that we both live in Japan and that we're both from Western countries.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, how do you feel about Western eating utensils compared to Japanese eating utensils?
Well, even in Japan, they use Western utensils sometimes. But overall, I do like chopsticks. I think it's very handy. It's just easier to pick up certain things. When I first came to Japan and saw people eating salad with chopsticks, I thought it was very strange. But if I try to eat it with a fork now, it's actually very difficult to pick up things like lettuce. And I prefer using chopsticks for things like that.
When you first started using chopsticks, did you get hand cramps?
Not so much, because I can't recall when I started using them, but I became comfortable with them before coming to Japan.
That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about the sleeping? How do you sleep? Do you prefer a bed or do you prefer the Japanese style futon?
Well, it's funny you say that. At first, I hated the idea of this thin little mattress. But I do find it's actually quite nice for my back. I actually prefer it to Western beds because it's better for my back. But I don't like sleeping on the floor. I like being higher up.
So, a high futon.
If I could get like tatami mat that's raised with a futon mattress on top, that would be best for me.
I think I've seen things like that in the stores. Platform bed with tatami.
Oh, that sounds nice. I should look for that.
Yeah, I should find one for you and point you in that direction. Well, what about bathing? The Japanese are famous for their onsens and the way they bathe. So do you prefer a Japanese style bathing situation or a Western style shower?
Well, I actually much prefer the Japanese style now. When I go back home, I find it quite difficult. I like to be able to clean myself before going into the bathtub.
That's a good thing. I do enjoy that as well. What about the custom of taking your shoes off before going into a house?
Well, that doesn't bother me too much. When growing up in Canada, I always took my shoes off coming inside anyways. I don't think it's as much of a ritual in Canada, but many people do it just to keep a clean house. But sometimes if I run out and I forget something like my car keys and I want to just run back inside, I'll tend to want to keep my shoes on rather than taking them
on and off every single time.
Okay, tell me. Confess now. Do you sometimes keep your shoes on and go into the house?
Yeah, sometimes I have, but I've caught my wife doing it a couple times too, and she's Japanese, so I
Hey.
guess I'm not that bad.
I don't think so. I do it too. What about sitting on the floor versus sitting in chairs? Which do you prefer?
Oh, again, I really dislike sitting on the floor. It isn't very comfortable for me. I'm a little bit tall, I have long legs, and I don't seem to have a place to put my legs when I'm on the floor. Usually my legs will fall asleep quickly and my back will start to bother me, so I prefer to sit up in a chair.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, I guess my last question refers to eating habits. Well, meals and how they're served. Do you prefer to eat meals that are served to you individually, or do you prefer to eat and share your food?
Well, that's a good question, but I don't know if I have a preference. I like the idea of eating all sorts of different things, so it can be fun eating in a Japanese style sometimes, but there are times where I do like to just have my own meal in front of me as well.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Today we're talking about do-overs. So, if you had a time machine and you could go back to your college years, is there anything that you might change or do differently?
I really wish that I would have had a chance to study abroad. I chose the wrong major initially. I was a nursing major for 2 years and worked really hard at a major I was really bad at. And then after 2 years, I switched schools and switched majors. And because of that, I had so many credits to take that I couldn't study abroad or do really any extra classes that were fun.
That must have been challenging. Where would you have liked to study abroad?
Really anywhere. I've always loved to travel, so I would have been open to going anywhere.
So, you said you studied nursing. What would you have studied otherwise?
Well, I first went into nursing because everyone, since I was really little, told me that I would be a good nurse. So I thought it was my calling in life. And then, after taking lots and lots of science classes, which I'm really bad at, I decided to switch majors to education. And then I ended up liking that major, so I'm really happy that I switched.
Is there any other major that you would find interesting that you might study if you went back, or you're satisfied with education?
I'm glad I did education because I really like that work-wise, but if I had to go with things that I'm interested in, I probably would have been some sort of art major. Both my siblings are artists, so kind of runs in the family a little bit.
What kind of art do you like?
Mainly dance, but I also was really into music growing up, so musical instruments and singing.
So, do you have any friends that were interested in art or dance that you had in those times?
Not really, no, actually.
Do you wish that you if you were in a group of people that liked the similar things, that you might have pursued different interests?
Definitely. I wish I would have done more with dance. I was a ballerina for 12 years, and I gave up on that when I was 14 because I got to the level where I either had to train professionally to do that for a job or stay in a class where the younger girls would keep moving up. And so at that time I quit, and although I don't wish I was still doing ballet, I wish I would have continued some kind of dance.
So, Sarah, any funny haircuts or anything like that?
Actually, yes. 1 week before I moved away to college, I cut my hair boy short. And then after that, like during my first semester, I dyed it all different shades of red. And my hair's actually been pretty much every length and every natural-ish color.
Wow. How did your friends and family respond to your red hair?
My mom didn't like it so much. She thought I was going to dye it like a natural red color, but it was more of a fuchsia red color. So she didn't like it very much. But my friends and like my siblings understood, because I've always been very different and didn't really care what other people thought about how I looked.
How long did you like it?
For a while, until I wanted change. I love change, so I'd always switch it to something else.
Wow, that's great. Thanks, Sarah.